2010, the 3C&D proposal died, not just because then Governor-elect John Kasich said he would reject the $400 million in federal funding for it, but also because Republicans at the State House were concerned about the costs of running trains long term. But that may not be the case this time. I talked with the Republican state senator about that. You describe yourself as a strong conservative. You've voted against and spoken out against spending that you feel is excessive. For instance, you've said that the American Rescue Plan's funds should be sent back to the federal government. But you wrote in an op-ed for the Dayton Daily News that, quote, I believe Ohio should thoroughly explore the most recent proposal from Amtrak. Why?
Well, I think that there's two separate issues here, right? First is the Amtrak proposal, which to me is intriguing, being able to connect our citizens to the rest of the Midwest and the East Coast and maybe even the South via the train system. I think especially to younger Ohioans is something that's very appealing, and I'm the youngest member of the Senate, and that is appealing. However, what I have said, and at the time of the op-ed I said, that needs to be done through federal spending that is bipartisan. And unfortunately, the transportation bill, the infrastructure bill that this was included with, was not very bipartisan. Picked up a few Republican votes in the Senate and a few in the House, but by large, majority of Republicans in the federal House and the federal Senate voted against this bill because of gluttonous and excessive spending. And so I'm very concerned of where this money is coming from. I wish that the Democrats in Congress had worked with the Republicans on this to come up with this money instead of the way they did it.
When you talk about being supportive of this, though, because it could connect our citizens, do you mean people in the Dayton area that you represent, or do you mean the whole state of Ohio? Are you on board with this potentially because it does help your community? Well,
the most recent map that they put out actually, unfortunately, does not include Dayton. I think it bypasses Dayton, which I think is problematic. But no, I think that citizens across Ohio could be benefited. I think that, it's a worthy proposal to look at. But I think even if we set aside where the money came from through the federal infrastructure bill that was highly Democratic, there's still a question of how much is the state on the hook for. Now, the governor announced that he's, putting together a group in his administration to study that question. I think that's the right move. But I think that we have to look at what is the cost to the taxpayers of Ohio, and then will it be worth it, depending on that cost.
Your fellow Republican in the House, Representative Haraz Gambari, is the only Republican who signed on to a resolution urging Congress to fund the Amtrak plan. That's two Republicans then that have come out in support of this. Have you talked to other Republicans about this? For instance, Speaker Bob Cupp and Senate President Matt Huffman, both from Lima, which is not one of the cities that would directly benefit.
Well, I would just push back and say, they could benefit because they'll be within 45 minutes of an Amtrak stop, right? I mean, even if you're in Chicago, you're not necessarily close to an Amtrak stop unless you live downtown. Just the same in the airport, right? I have to drive 30 minutes to get to the Dayton airport. So the same thing would be for Amtrak. So I would hasten that. But look, I think that, we as Republicans in general should be concerned with spending. Unfortunately, I feel like this General Assembly, we've not been concerned with spending. In our budget, we taxed and spent nearly every dollar. We could have provided a bigger tax cut. And then we've spent all of these federal dollars that I believe should be sent back to the federal government. And so with this, though, I do think that we have to be very concerned. What is the state share here? And what is the state share in 10 years, right? We got to remember, this is not just a one-year commitment. This is a lifetime commitment for the state of Ohio. And I think we just have to be very, very careful and concerned in ensuring we know what that looks like.
Have you heard from any business groups on whether they support this? Because I would imagine that the support of groups like the Ohio Chamber of Commerce would be critical to getting this project going, and especially getting Republicans on board.
No, I don't think any of the business groups have weighed in either at the state or locally. But I do think I will say that I hear it from citizens, which is why I'm interested in this. And I understand. Look, if you talk to all my friends on the East Coast, one of the benefits is that they're on Amtrak and they can take an hour train to New York City or to Boston or to Philly or to DC, et cetera. And so yes, if you can take a train to Chicago or Nashville or Detroit, it could be a selling point for us, which is why I think we should look at it. But I think we got to be very careful and concerned where the money came from, and also very careful and concerned about what the state share of that money is.